Large-scale mobilizations. When taking sample quantities greater than 20, especially from remote areas, it may become unwieldy to use a hard body shroud. In those cases, we provide a bag and O-ring setup. The bag and O-ring, while more visually crude, provides all the same quality assurance of the hard body shroud and utilizes the same real-time leak check monitoring utilizing helium. In our setup, we have a sand snake in an O-ring configuration used to hold down the shroud. The shroud, which is a large plastic bag, both of which provided by the lab, that has been pulled down to minimize the actual area of the shroud environment itself. Your helium tank, helium detectors, a flow controller, your sample canister, and your purge setup. The first step is to do your shut-in test. Now with this configuration, your shut-in test needs to be done with your flow controller closed, and we simply attach it to our can and make sure that it holds at -30. While I leave that, I will begin to assemble everything else. The next step is to put our internal helium detector into our shroud, put our helium line so that it injects into the shroud as well. My well line for my purge portion of this will be external to the shroud. And I now will begin to charge my shroud with helium. As I'm doing this, I will begin to assemble my purge setup. My purge setup consists of my well line going directly to the in port and my purge line going from the out port to the purge can itself. As soon as I connect this, we will begin purging. Similar to before, when purging, we want to monitor our flow-through detector to make sure at no point do we see any breakthrough of helium. If you see a large amount of helium breakthrough, it is indication that there is a break in the sample line. If after 1 or 2 well volumes you start to see small amounts, it is an indication that there is poor seal at your wellhead. I will now start to purge. We'll purge for our given amount of time. While we do this, I will remove my flow controller from my can, see that it is held vacuum. I will then prepare my clay ferrule and nut to affix my well line within the shroud to the flow controller. Now that I have completed purging, I will begin that step. It's important to remove your flow controller from the can, place the can internal to your helium shroud. Make sure that your concentration is still above 20. It is. It has held strong since my initial injection. I will then use a nut and ferrule to connect my well line to my flow controller. It's important when doing so to have the ferrule conical side up with about 1 centimeter of line at the end. We will then take our flow controller after it has been removed from our can. Similar to as before, I will do it hand tight and then give it another quarter crank. At this point, I will put my flow controller internal to the shroud and connect it to my can. When I do this, I want to make sure that I maintain my helium and that my sample time does not take more than 7 to 10 minutes as before. This is how you sample with the bag and O-ring setup.